Very good morning to everyone. Um we've had a previous conversation where we talked about diabetes and several aspects of living with diabetes. In today's conversation, we are going to be focusing more on type 1 diabetes, and we are going to be talking in a more focused manner about the psychosocial aspects of living with type 1 diabetes. I'm joined here this morning by a group of vibrant young women, and I'll be taking the privilege of introducing each one of them to you now. Okay, that brings me to introducing myself a little bit. My name is Priyanka Padhy. I'm currently an assistant professor at the Department of Psychology at Lady Shri Ram College for Women. I'm also a doctoral student presently. My research is on chronic illnesses, and my focus group is children with chronic illness conditions, including type 1 diabetes, but also thalassemia and epilepsy. In today's discussion, I'll be using my research work as the standpoint from where I will be talking. And I will be bringing in certain voices from my research, voices of my participants, young people that I have interacted with, families that I have interacted with. And I hope to make that sharing meaningful as we go along. We also have here with us Chhavi. Chhavi was diagnosed with diabetes in 2014. She says that I work as a marketing professional in New Delhi. I'm a member of Saksham Support Group for Type 1 Diabetes and the head of the chapter at BCDF. Maybe Chhavi will tell us a little bit more about what BCDF stands for. I love spending weekends reading and penning down my thoughts, and she also loves unicorns. We have here Kanak Kataria, who's going to bring a very unique mixture of things. We'll see as we go through her bio note. Kanak Kataria is a trainee clinical psychologist at NIMHANS, which is National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. She's also a type 1 diabetic herself. So that's where she will actually bring in uh, both a research perspective and a perspective which is based on her own lived experiences of having type 1 diabetes. She is passionate about health psychology research, particularly about the social psychological aspects of managing chronic illnesses such as type 1 diabetes. Kanak, we share that research interest entirely. Uh, she hopes to spread awareness about mental health and its implications in type 1 diabetes. And in her free time, she enjoys reading and debating. And finally, we have here with us Yashasvi Jain. Yashasvi says that I'm a type 1 diabetic since I was 16 years old. I'm an academic head in a school. My diabetic journey has been full of lots of ups and downs. I like to doodle a lot, and sometimes I like to draw related to diabetes. Art is cathartic in dealing with stress. My diabetes is a part of my life, but it doesn't define me. It has made me stronger, and I believe that I'm still finding my footing. I welcome everybody here, and we will proceed with today's discussion. Just to sort of set the opening tone for our discussion, we are obviously talking about psychosocial aspects of living with chronic illness conditions. In one of our previous conversations, we've already established and we've talked about the unique location of chronic illnesses. The fact that these are no longer illnesses that we die of, but these have come to become illnesses that we have to live with for the rest of our lives, right? So in the words of Register, she actually called a researcher by the name of Register who calls it interminable diseases. So as opposed to terminal diseases, these are interminable diseases. And of course, there is a whole lot of literature which talks about all of the psychosocial aspects of living with chronic illness conditions, the kind of challenges that they pose for the self's relationship to the others and to the larger world. My own research, I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm examining a particular construct which is called resilience. Resilience basically refers to our ability to adapt in the face of significant adversity. And although it's a word which is now very commonly used, especially in the context of the pandemic, we are hearing this word again and is that um, it's a capacity which allows us to bounce back from very significant adversities in our lives. And of course, in order for that to happen, we need a whole host of social ecological supports to be prevailing in our environment. right? So there has to be supports that are coming from the individuals, microsystems and macro systems, and so on and so forth. So whether it is the family, whether it is the neighborhood, whether it is the school, the parents' workplace, and of course the larger social culture, all of these have to be supportive in order for an individual to actually show resilience. Earlier, we used to think of resilience as an individual capacity, which is there in some people and not there in some people. But now we increasingly understand that actually resilience is not within just the individual, but it is in all of these systems around us. That's what my research is focusing on. And that's it interacts very significantly with what we are going to be talking about today, because all these young women who are here with us, we will all collectively talk about how these psychosocial forces around us are actually shaping this entire diabetes journey of ours, right? So I will start with Chavi, but just to sort of, give a little bit of an orienting idea about this, there is this idea of a cognitive triad that we often talk about in psychology, which basically refers to our relationship with our own self, with the others, the world, and the future. So the triad involves relationship with itself, the world, and the future. So Chavi, when you are speaking, probably you can shed a little bit of light on how has this diabetes journey impacted your relationship with your own self, with the world, and how has it impacted your view of your future? We'll begin with you, Chavi.
Okay. Um, I love how you introduced the topic, Doctor. Um, and I have a couple of things to say here. I don't have anything written down, so I'm going to just speak as it comes to me. So, to start off with your question, how has it shaped me as a person? Um, in my numerous conversations with Beena ma'am, I say that while I have seen people around me and in literal sense mourning my diagnosis, I was diagnosed in 2014 as an adult. Um, I still to this day believe that diabetes was the best thing that happened to me because I don't think I had a sense of what I was doing with my life before my diagnosis or where I was headed. Because let me just say that mortality as a concept, we do not really understand and we tend to take our lives for granted. I understood that after my diagnosis. So, when you ask me how has it shaped me, how has it impacted me, all the good things, all the right things have come to me. I've got a sense of a purpose in my life. I've When I was diagnosed, I had a lot of naysayers in my family who said that my life was over, and so I made it a point that I'm going to go ahead and literally do everything that they said I would not be able to. And I'm also going to bring in the topic where you said that, now that these are interminable diseases, which means we have to learn to live with them. And so somewhere the kind of social surrounding you have does tend to impact how your life shapes up living with diabetes. That's very, very true. And while I've had people, and I still continue to have people who doubt and question what I'm going to do with my life, my parents, Dr. Beena, the whole community, Kanak is here, Yashasvi is here. These people, I think once you start seeing everybody else around you doing so much, and understanding that this is a part of who you are. I mean, it's really not going to go away. That's just a feeling that you have to bring in yourself, that this is there and you have to learn to do everything that everybody else is doing, while you manage this condition. I don't call it a disease. I don't think it's fair to call it a disease. This condition, I mean, literally, the best thing that happened to me. And I have also, can I just take a second to also talk about just how much you can do as a person living with diabetes for the community once you start getting involved. Um, and how much that also makes life better for you, knowing that you are able to communicate and connect with people who live with the same condition. So yeah, I don't really find anything about living with diabetes such a big issue. If anything, it just improves your quality of life, health wise, physically, mentally. Yeah.
Chhavi, would you also like to tell us a little bit about how this has impacted your sense of the future?
um Yes, so picking up upon the fact that I see a purpose to my life, I see myself wanting to do things not because it's said or defined by the society. So let me just take you back to 2014 when I was diagnosed, and I was in my mid 20s. I come from a family where, um, fortunately, education has been the pivotal point of all of us. Like, I don't think my parents really were very bothered about what I'm going to do in my personal life, in the sense that am I going to get married or not, or something. Like, for them, it was just about, listen, you've got to go and make something of your life, or get that degree or whatever. And within a span of 15 days after my diagnosis, I could see my mom's attitude changing. Suddenly there were these whole conversations about her life is over, you should get her married, this, that, everything. And while at that point I was studying and I was still very focused, I was always a very focused student, but for me, it was just one part. Like, I did not make or have any concrete plans for my future. Like, I was okay with the general way in which life is defined, कि अभी पढ़ाई कर लो, अभी शादी कर लो, अभी ये कर लो, like that. um I think after my diagnosis, today I do things because I see like a purpose to it. Today I do things because I see it probably having a positive impact in my life and maybe with the others associated in the next 5 years. It's no longer about settling down to whatever the society defines, because really, who is to give us the assurance that I even get to see tomorrow? Like I said, the concept of mortality is there in your face like something, because I am, while nobody is guaranteed a tomorrow, that's true. Who are we to say? But for me and for others living in this community, it's true. No, we are not guaranteed a tomorrow. Who knows, tomorrow I could go into a low blood sugar while sleeping and I could go away. So I do things that um make sense to me today, but then also should have some sort of positive impact in my life and maybe the ones associated with me. I don't do things just for the heck of it anymore. Let me just say it, because yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ravi. Uh, so many interesting threads and so many important issues that you have raised. We will definitely come back. We'll circle back and we'll sort of come back into that discussion. Um, Yashasvi, should we begin with your presentation then?
Sure, Priyanka. Let's go ahead. Yeah. So basically, I'm Yashasvi Jain, and I got diagnosed when I was 18, not 16, and it's been 16 years since I've got diabetes now. And it took me a lot of time to understand that, okay, what exactly I have. Is it, and when I got diagnosed, of course, it took me a lot of time to accept it. So I come from the entire family where hereditary way the diabetes isn't passed on, but then it took me a lot of time to understand that, okay, this is type 1 diabetes. It's not hereditary. It is an autoimmune disease, which is, there is some difficulty, some sort of issue which is there, and through which I got this. So a lot of time I had taken, and I think I would say almost 10 years I took to accept that, okay, I have this. But within those 10 years I used to enjoy it also. I mean, there were days when I actually have said that, okay, I'm type 1 diabetic, and I kind of used this as a freeway card also. I would not deny that that's also taken place in my life. However, after 10 years, I think I got settled with the fact that, okay, it's there and I have to live with it. And I've taken it as a partner, like it's more of a life partner. Even in fact, if I end up getting a life partner, this life partner is here to stay. Other life partner can still move out here and there, but this one is this one is like totally there in my life, and somebody I would not want to throw out also, because I've got so used to being in this scenario altogether that I kind of like it now. But yes, it has definitely made me stronger, because I never thought I could do things like how Chhavi said that, uh, everybody said that you can't do this. I think that it's like a trigger point between all of the I mean, if you check with all type 1D patients, it's going to be there. We've been, like coddled. Basically, we've been coddled by our parents, by society, by our relatives, friends. They would be like, okay, you go live in a cocoon. That's not possible. We cannot end up living in a cocoon. We have to go live in the world. We have to be there. And I think that cocoon had to be shattered. So it took some time for me. In my case, like I would say 10 years. But after that, I think I would say I have been rising. Still, there's a lot of angle, a lot of things left. I can still explore. Still, I'm trying to explore. And that's how I said I'm still trying to find my footing out here, because and it's been a good journey. I mean, I never thought I could do something in another field. I studied something else, then I changed my field, and this new field I was not very excited, but suddenly things went in a good frame. Then like and of course my old field is also a lot, it's carrying forward with me. I'm a graphic designer also, so I do like to doodle and all. So that doodling I've taken into different format. Sometimes I'll end up drawing something related to diabetes, something related to normal life, something related to my current field, which is education. So different things, and it's like I've got a complete combined effort where everything is colliding, and still there's something beautiful to see. So I kind of like this entire thing. And if I talk about diabetes, it's something which is like totally, I never accepted it. I mean, expected that I'll end up having it, but now with acceptance and with the way things are going, it's coming out pretty good. So likewise for me, I would say it has given me a lot of factors to see, and it has provided me some growth factors also. If I talk about world, of course I do get coddled still. I mean, I don't know why, but it's still there, and I think that's something which you cannot change. However, some people say it's been easy. It's not. Some people think that because I have this condition and things have been easy, it's not like that, because everybody's judging us out. And I think even Chhavi and Kanak would agree that people, they like to see things with they like literally watching each and every move. How are we dealing with things? How are we doing things? And if by God's grace we do progress, it's coming out with a lot of questions that how can you progress with something like this? Guys, if we are working hard, we are working equally, or rather I would say we are putting better efforts, because we have to prove ourselves, not just to the people around us or our family, even ourselves. Sometimes we need to, sometimes there are times when I feel, okay, maybe I need to overcompensate because of my condition, that probably I'm not giving my best. And it does come into our head that because I'm type 1 diabetic, maybe I need to give some time to my condition, and because of that I am not able to give my 100% to my work. So I ensure that instead of 100%, I end up working 100 or 10%, where that 10% can compensate for my condition, for my factors. And in case that 10% time I am utilizing, I'll ensure I'll take it from my personal work, and overcompensate for that thing. That's a definite thing. I have actually done that, and still I was questioned, and it's okay. I mean, everybody sees it in a very different factor altogether. And likewise, Chavi said marriage, that's a big question, which I think every T1D person goes through, be it a girl or a boy. It's out there in the world. You can just try, and probably it's luck factor also. So a lot of other things. And see, honestly, different things are there, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But of course, never sell yourself short. Whatever you are the best you can be, and we are working towards it. So God's grace, everything's going to work out well. That's what my perception is about. Future wise, of course, going well in my field, I want to go ahead, I want to grow ahead. Let's see how it goes. But as of right now, I've come to a stagnation because there's nothing beyond than what I've got. So probably maybe I'll switch over something else. Let's see how that goes. So Priyanka, any questions for me? Please let me know.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll
Sure.
Kanak, and then we will come back and
All right.
a little bit more on some very interesting things that you've spoken about, including diabetes being a very strange bedfellow and a life partner.
It is. It's the best one rather right now.
Right. Thanks, Yashasvi.
Thank you, Priyanka.
We'll begin with you now.
Thanks, Priyanka, for the introduction and for really, the whole thing being organized and structured so well. So I come from a little bit of a different perspective. One, of course, as you mentioned, because, there is the component of me being a diabetic and there is the component of my research also having been in this area. But on the other hand, I was diagnosed when I was 2.5 years old. And that, I think, has led to a slightly different perspective, I think, from what, Chhavi and Yashasvi have had, because I think they had the whole transition of having to adjust to life with diabetes. Whereas to me, the concept of life with diabetes is a little weird because that's just life as I've known it. That there is no life without diabetes for as long as I can remember. It's been a rough journey. I think having had such a long time with it, it's been over 22 years now, I think. So I think having had such a long time with it, there have been ups and downs, like any relationship. A lot of downs, I think, more than I would have liked to see along the way, because it really just takes over all aspects of your life, especially as a kid. It's tough to struggle with, do I take my injections at school? Do I need to hide them from my classmates? Because fourth graders don't understand what this is. And there are going to be rumors that are going to flow around. Which is kind of what happened when my classmates did end up finding out in fifth grade. So those things ended up having, an impact, and that stuff really stayed with me. And I think people react in one of two ways. One of which is, oh my God, you're so brave for doing this, and this whole like sympathy that sort of just flows in your way. And the other part of it is the ignorance and just not understanding what's happening at all. And personally, I find both equally frustrating. I mean, I at some points would prefer the ignorance to the sympathy. And it's really shaped my identity to a very large extent, because I think I echo what Yashasvi says about, in a way, trying to almost compensate, for this perceived inferiority of sorts. And, as a kid, when I was growing up and, I was getting good marks in school, there would always be this idea of, oh, Kanak's the kid who gets good marks despite diabetes. And I sort of made it like my life's mission to just end that sentence as Kanak's the kid that gets good marks, and the diabetes shouldn't have to factor into that at all, which is not as easy as I had hoped it would be. So there were those struggles. There were struggles of, birthday parties, and do you eat the cake? Do you not eat the cake? What do you do about it? I don't think I went for as many sleepovers as I would have wanted to. All of the school trips were instantly out of question if my parents couldn't accompany me, because even though I started managing my diabetes around the time I was 10 or 11, I mean, you still require supervision at that stage. And then there was teenage, which was, I think, a very tumultuous time. And this was this whole rebellion phase where I was just like, I don't deserve this, and I have done nothing to sort of, have to live this sort of a life, and I'm not going to take care of it. And what is the worst thing that will happen? So I'm just going to eat whatever I want. I'll take extra insulin, and, life's just going to have to deal with that. I'm not going to care. That phase lasted for a while with, as you may expect, fairly adverse health consequences. But the worst part was that at that point I couldn't seem to bring myself to care, because being a regular teenager seemed to be at odds with being a diabetic, and I wanted a choice there, but I didn't really have one. So I think that phase went on for a long time. Of course, the medical professionals sort of and my family helped me get back on track to some extent, but I think the angst that really was there never really went away until I turned maybe 18, and I figured out that, wait, I can actually control this thing if I want to. And it seems that, I've been ignoring that perspective all along, because growing up, I had a lot of pretty bad numbers, HbA1cs that would probably make people frown and gasp and all of those things. I developed some complications by the time I was 18. So that was a real scare for me, realizing that, I'm just turning into an adult and I'm already having problems with my eyesight. And that was, I think, the moment where I said, okay, I'm going to turn this around now. Change of perspective entirely, started associating a lot with other people from the community, which helped, their insights and their inputs. And step by step, I realized that, it doesn't have to be so bad after all. And someone, I think, has given me an analogy where diabetes is like a tenant, okay, that's just like living in your body. And it's not one of the nice tenants, but you were, for some reason, you ended up signing an indefinite lease with it. So now you don't really have a choice. And so you can choose to be one of those landlords who's just like, do your own thing, or you can choose to really like enforce those rules and make sure that this guy doesn't mess around too much. And I think that that's the perspective I then adopted. The sort of change I saw in the numbers, the sort of change in controls is something that my doctors don't fully understand till date. And I think that's where the power of thinking and actually, what psychology can do in this whole thing gets underestimated very often. So it's now come to a point where, yeah, I think resilience is really how I see it. I think, and it's to me, resilience, it's that whole concept of resilience is ordinary magic. Like, this wasn't something that you had to work very hard to acquire. It happens along the way, as long as you have the right supports, the right social support, the right resources available. In terms of my view towards others, of course, there are a lot of points where there was almost a sense of anger and jealousy that why don't other people have this? But that's gone away with time. And I have also started to, I think by now, I find myself saying at times that if there were a cure to come out tomorrow, I'm not 100% sure I would take it. And that's a controversial statement, I understand. But at the same time, this is something that's shaped all my life, and I have no idea what my life would look like without it. All of the strengths, the careful planning, the attention to detail, the sort of vigilance to make sure that nothing goes wrong, the idea of taking care of people and being responsible and taking care of yourself. I don't know if I would have those things, and I'm not really ready to give those up. So that's also definitely been a thing. In terms of the future, I think I continue to have that whole idea of just compensating, overcompensating, striving for whatever it is to sort of rise beyond the title, the tag, the label of just being a diabetic. And so far it's worked out well. So let's see how that goes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kanak. Uh, Two very differing sort of perspectives that have emerged here from our conversations. Uh, One where Kanak is talking about never having known a life which doesn't have diabetes, right? So life is what it means to live with diabetes. And then we have Chhavi and Yashasvi here who were diagnosed as adults and of course had to come to terms with it, had to adjust, had to make accommodations in their life, and in many ways redefine their lives in order to make space for diabetes. So these two very differing sort of positions that our panelists have today spoken about. Um, Also interesting to see that there is an attempt to sort of positively interpret the entire experience, and in what in literature we often talk in terms of benefit finding, that there is an active attempt on our parts to make sense of what is happening in our lives, and also to see whether there is some benefit that we may have derived from it along the way. So like Chhavi was saying, when she was talking about it, she was saying it's the best thing that happened to her, and there's so much that she has learned along the way about herself, about how she can deal with such difficulties, and also about realizing her own strengths and realizing how the world around her can also rally around her when she needs it too. So the benefit finding aspect is definitely there. Yashasvi is also talking about it, that it's almost like you've come to accept it as a lifelong partner. And although you have misgivings with this partner, and you don't particularly like everything about this partner, and even so it is like a familiar presence, and you are okay with spending your life with that, right? But on the other hand, we have Kanak who's talking about how it's it has its pitfalls, it has its it is not as easy as it may seem, or that there are many challenges that have happened, like she was saying, more downs than there have been ups. So definitely a huge number of challenges that Kanak has also spoken about, right? So clearly there is this mix of things that is happening, and it's not so easy to categorize it as this or that. All our participants have spoken today about this need to overcompensate, or that to sort of define yourself as somebody who's beyond just being a diabetic, and that's something that has come out very prominently. Chavi, would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I'll tell you, back in 2017, this was, so I was studying for a completely different degree when I was diagnosed. And after that, I completely shifted profile. So marketing was something that came into my life after my diagnosis. So back in 2017, when I was completing up my master's, I remember somewhere on some WhatsApp group, Beena ma'am, I don't remember what it was, but I remember somebody had spoken about an interview, and Beena ma'am had said that, you people should not have to overcompensate just because you're diabetics, or you're people living with diabetes. So that kind of is something that I have held along in my life, that um, you know you can or you should work hard, you should try to achieve everything that you have to, but I am not saying that you should not work, because I know that's going against what Yashasvi and Kanak just said, but um, I have stopped really overcompensating for something that I need to do in my life, because the physical aspects or the physical demands of living with diabetes are a lot, and you cannot kind of just keep giving all the time. There's a threshold limit to it also. So yeah, that's something that I truly believe. I work hard, I do everything, but I don't tend to overcompensate anymore. In terms of, you have to set the boundaries right, be it at workplace or be it in your personal space. You've got to do what you've got to do, and sometimes that might come across as a little maybe rude, if I can say that. um, can I say this, that um, in the Indian context, for a girl to try to set her boundaries, somewhere that's considered not appropriate, and I tend to do that with, as a girl living with diabetes, and I faced the flack for it. But that was one conversation that I had. Always hold on to the one that Veena ma'am said, that we shouldn't have to do that. Um, you know, you need to know your boundaries, because like Kanak said, that when she turned 18, she started facing health issues as a complication. I While that was because she did not take care of it, as somebody who was diagnosed as an adult, um, at workplace, when I try to overcompensate, making sure that I'm capable enough or I don't lose out on the opportunities that have come to me, I realized what I was doing with my health. So I would ignore my numbers. I would, go on to just continue working because there's a deadline looming on my head. But and I'm not saying that I want to play a sympathy card, but the truth is that there is a condition that I live with, and that does require or warrant a certain amount of um my efforts to manage it as well. So if I need to, let's say, take a breather for 5 minutes, then I will take it, because I need to manage my condition. So yeah.
Right. I'm also thinking, going back to what Kanak was saying, one very important thing that she spoke about is that uh, when it comes to the trade-off between people being ignorant and people sort of, offering too much sympathy, then probably it's you would rather go with ignorance than with the overdose of sympathy that one tends to draw when one has a chronic illness. So, do you think that this tendency to overcompensate could also be coming as a rejection of that extensive and overbearing sympathy that one could be getting? Kanak, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think, Chhavi, what you're saying is actually not in disagreement with, I'm not sure about Yashasvi's point of view here, but yeah, with mine at all, because I think while overcompensating is something that continues, it's not something I want to be doing, right? It's not at this conscious level where,
Yeah.
I want to constantly do it. But I think much as I have come to accept it, definitely, I don't have any doubt about it. I mean, hence the idea of not taking the cure. I'm not really sure if, I would be able to just, uh, I don't know. This is tough to translate into those words. But okay, to just come to the question of, the sympathy versus ignorance domain and whether compensation is related to that, I think it's, I don't think it has been in my case, actually. I think in my case, it's been more of, and this goes to my personality as well, that a lot of this is perceived stuff. This is not stuff that I have necessarily always received as feedback from people. But the idea of, if you're wearing rose-colored glasses, then everything looks a certain way. If you wear hostile-colored glasses or whatever, they look that way as well. And I think it's in response to that I really try to do it. And that's interesting because, I was growing up, I was never given any messages about diabetes as something that's wrong with you, or, you are different from other kids. I mean, I knew that I was, there was no denying it. I mean, other kids don't have the number of devices I did in my bag. But none of those messages were ever explicitly communicated. And at the same time, I developed this perceived sense of, this is a big deal anyway. And I think that comes from small incidents. So I'm going to take this time to just recall one thing that comes to mind right now, which is when I was, I think, 5 years old, and we were out for some party. And at the end of the party, there was dessert that was brought out. And I had decided to skip that dessert. And I saw my mom, and my mom was turning out the dessert, and someone asked her, what's going on? And she said that, no, if Kanak's not eating it, then I don't want to eat it. And you would be surprised at the kind of impact that that can have on a kid that young, because I mean, I think I decided at that point that never again should she have to sort of go through something that, is happening because of me. And I mean, as a 3-year-old who was being injected multiple times a day, I had been mean enough to her. I had said all sorts of things about, you're a bad mom and you don't love me and why are you doing this to me and all of that. To see this on top of that, I think that added to that sense of, okay, you know what, things aren't as, I mean, they're my normal, but they are probably not what the objective normal is. And then it was that perceived sense of difference from other people that I tried starting to like compensate for. Consciously, I wish I could reach the level of acceptance that Chhavi's at, probably. But I think I'm just not there yet. So that remains a goal.
Can I just add to that, just gonna take a minute. I was diagnosed as an adult, and let me just say this, Kanak, that that idea that, why your parents have to go through that, trust me, it resonates much more when you're diagnosed as an adult, because you are so much more aware of your diagnosis. As a child, you don't have that worldly sense. As an adult, you understand the factors that are playing in, and so many times I see my mom having to like answer the things and everything. So adult diagnosis, child diagnosis, I think that guilt of seeing your parents having to go through this thing for something that's not even their fault. I mean, really, this is not hereditary. Even if it was, but it's not. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really an adult versus child diagnosis thing. It's really just being a parent to a child who lives with diabetes.
Right.
I would also like to add, in fact, a lot of people in my family are diabetic, but still, when I got my diagnosis done, my dad, who was diabetic himself, he cried like anything, and it was difficult. And, at that point of time, I think nobody had an idea that it's not related, it's not hereditary. So he kind of felt that it's because of him. And my grandfather has it, and my maternal grandmother also had it. So, all these guys met up and they were like, are we the reason that you've got it? So, I mean, seeing that whole scenario, it was very traumatic, actually. So, I mean, it's your age, my age, or maybe Chhavi's age. It's always going to be traumatic because our parents have to go through it because of us. And being a child, even if you're an adult or even if you're a mature, maybe 30, 40 or 50-year-old also, if your parent has to go something like that, it just breaks your heart. So I think we've all had that moment. So everyone's going to have that bit. Sorry.
I just want to raise a particular question at this point because I'm hearing that from all three of you. That there has been a lot of active attempts to make sense of what's happening. So when parents are and relatives are getting together to discuss, is it because of us that this has happened? very actively families tend to sort of make sense of why is this happening with us, and what did we do that this is happening with us. Any of you would like to share some incident from your childhood or from the time of your diagnosis about how you actively tried to make sense of what was happening as a family together?
I had two incidents rather, I would say. So one where my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, so she used to tell me that don't go out, stop meeting people because then they'll get to know you are diabetic. So I said, listen, this is not here for a certain time period. It's here for life. So you expect me to just stay in the house locked up and not move out, because if I'll go out, I'll have to take up a shot, and basically then anybody and everybody will get to know. So should I stop living my life? And I was what, 18. You cannot tell a 18-year-old to stop living. That's like a cardinal sin you can come across with, right? So I literally looked at her and I said, what are you saying to me? And she's looking at me and she's telling me, I'm not saying it in a wrong sense, I just don't want people to know. I said, listen, I'm 18, I have a long life to live, and probably if not today, someday they will get to know that I have this condition. And what will you tell them? That okay, I didn't want her to move out because of this. It doesn't make sense. So my dad stepped up and he said, listen, you are not staying here. I did not stay in Delhi. I did my college outside. He said, I don't want you to stay here. You have to go earn your exposure. He parceled me off. He said, go, live outside, live your life, do what you want to do. That's why I said I didn't take it in a very healthy way, because I was not here with family also. However, the acceptance was, it took me time, but it was a good experience, and that exposure helped me, because then I met anyone and everyone. The first sentence I used to tell them, hi, I'm Yashasvi, I'm a type 1 diabetic, this is what is my condition and this is how it is. I'll rather share. I went for my job interview, for my current job, the job I am in. I went in, I had not even opened my file. I said, listen, I have 3 conditions. You accept me, then we'll sit for the interview. Otherwise, I don't want to go ahead with the interview. So the person who was taking my interview, she's my director. So she looked at me and she's like, okay, this girl is weird. What is she talking about? So she said, okay, lay out your conditions and then we'll discuss. So I said, okay, one is that I don't have the degree you're looking at, but I will work and I will get it, because like I told you, I switched my field. So she said, okay, never mind, if you're good at it, we can work it out. Then I said, okay, that probably I have this condition, you're okay with it. And then third was, I don't know till what time I will work, so I'm not a very permanent looking person. I mean, I've switched my jobs a lot. So she said, never mind, I like your, you being very frank and the kind of attitude you have, let's see how it works out. I said, all right. So when, after I moved out and then I met her for the second time, she's like, nobody lays out the condition that, I have this condition on the first one. I said, listen, I am this person. It took me a long time to accept it. If anybody wants me in their life, it's always better to, not, I'm just not talking about marriage and all, even in your workplace, all my friends, everybody knows that I have this condition, I need to go through these things. They are aware, in case I have a hypo or I have a hyper, they know how to treat me, because nobody knows what can happen. So it's always better that the other person has an idea how to help me out. I mean, I can help myself, but there are times when I would require some help. So why not ensure that everybody around me is aware of it? I think Chhavi would agree. We've counseled a lot of kids that, don't hide it. You're not supposed to
Yeah,
hide it. Be out and
yeah,
open for this. So,
yeah.
I mean, that
Very
is
true.
one thing which is still there. And that lady loves me. She's like, okay, you've grown, and like the way I've grown for her. So she's like, I really am amazed that you could have done something like that. And she told me that it's something which nobody does. That you're laying out your cards completely out in the open. I said, listen, it's always better to lay them out, because if you're accepting me, then I know that you've accepted me beyond my difficulties and everything. And also, you're going to judge me on my talent. Then you're not going to judge me on that she hid something from me. So if everything is out and open, and then I'm working and then I'm doing things, I may end up overcompensating for my work, but that's because I am willing to do it. It's not because I want to do it for anybody else, because she knows it. She's has that idea, and I've been always vocal about it. And touch wood, I've never had any difficulty, like Chhavi said, that that I need 5 minutes, because if I ask for 5, I've got 10 minutes. So I think that's the kind of thing I really wanted, and it's there. So if I say I want 5 minutes, I end up getting 10 or 15 minutes, and she herself is looking after me whenever there's something and she's around. So she'll ask me, are you okay? Do you need something? So, that is the kind of thing we look for. That is the kind of scenario or maybe atmosphere we want to work in. And of course, there was a time when there was change in management and she was not there, some other lady was there. That's when I felt bad, because that lady told me, if you're type 1 diabetic and you go for like highs and lows, why are you working? You don't need to work, you should go and relax yourself. And you should get, once your things are better, then you can come and join back. I said, ma'am, this is something which happens to me on a daily basis, so I'll leave my job on a daily basis and join in again on the daily basis. That's not possible. I just need 10 minutes in case it's a low, and probably I just need to take a shot when it's high. So it'll just relax me out. It is something which is as easy as that. So I really laughed at that lady's perception, basically, because nobody can ever, you know, we come across a lot of weird people also on daily basis. I think Kanak and Chhavi would agree on this, that people have a lot of misconceptions about what type 1 diabetes is all about and how do we treat it. So I mean, the best I have done and I can do is, I ensure anybody and everybody who's around me knows what it is, how to treat it, how to treat the lows, how to treat the highs. And I've been very vocal about it. So if not like 100% people, but at least 80 to 85% people around me are aware of what I need and how I need. It may sound selfish because it's only me I'm talking about, but I think in the end I'm also ensuring that these people are also aware, because if something happens to anyone around them, it will help them out. I mean, that's what I feel. I mean, I don't know, rest these guys can tell.
Doctor, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry, this issue of unsupportive attitude at the workplace. Chhavi, Kanak, would you like to weigh in on this? Have you experienced this?
Okay, can I take that, Kanak?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay. I actually resonate with everything that Yashasvi is saying. I was diagnosed in 2014. I quickly went in for my master's and then I started working. Before that, I was working for my father. So for me, anyways, it was like a complete 360-degree turn, because I was working for somebody who's not family. So there are, of course, expectations. That being said, I think because I was entering the workspace with a lot of clarity in my head as to the fact that I'm here to work, but I also live with the condition and I need to manage it. Again, that may come from the fact that two things. One, that I was diagnosed as an adult, so my turnaround time to understand that, listen, this requires you to really put your head to it if you want to avoid complications. Second, that again, very early on in my diagnosis, I became a part of the community. So for me, having a dialogue at workplace or having a start point to know how to, start a conversation about this at workplace came very early on. I see a lot of people struggling to understand whether they speak about it at work or not. And speaking in the community, I knew very early on from my conversations that, listen, ye to batana hi padega, there is no other way around this. So I never actually have faced a problem. On the contrary, I'm not kidding, I have had such amazing people that I work with. Earlier, the two companies that I worked for were in the healthcare, so I just assumed, listen, because I work with people who are nurse educators, and then people who are surrounded by doctors, maybe this condition makes more sense to them. But today, I work in a field where dur tak nobody has any connections with the healthcare field, and yet I, again, like Yashasvi said, I give it to my manager for being the most considerate person that I know. Like if I tell him that, I think my diabetes is taking a toll on me today, he's going to be like, what do you want to do? He's giving me that flexible option. But that's taken a lot of efforts from my side to open a dialogue about it at work. to make sure that, they are aware of what I'm living with. Yashasvi knows this, and we've spoken about this. I am very vocal about taking insulin in public, checking my blood sugars in public, because A, what do you want me to be ashamed of is my question. If I need to take insulin to survive, in my heart, I know I'm not doing anything right. So when people point fingers and say that, why are you taking insulin in public? Or you termed as a druggie, if that's ever happened to one of you. What am I supposed to be ashamed of, I ask. So I've always taken my insulin in public. Before the lockdown, I just switched jobs. So I made sure that I sat on my table while I wear a CGM. I would check my blood sugars sitting right there, so that my colleagues, like Yashasvi said, they should know what to do. If I'm going into a low, they need to know what is the corrective course of action. If I'm on a high, I need to take a shot, but then there is a possibility I might not be feeling good that day. I need to take time off. um and I know initially I said that, I don't really care so much about the future, but the concept of mortality, the concept of this whole idea of developing complications, it's there. I'm aware of it. So because of that, if that requires me to open a dialogue, say things, be vocal, I will do it. And touch wood, should not speak too soon, but at least after my diagnosis, all the places that I've worked, I have had the best colleagues, best people that I've worked with. My health was a priority even for those people. And I understand that's not something that comes for a lot of people, or maybe comes easily. And hence I say that at workplace, make sure that you find at least a certain set of people that you can confide in. If you're not comfortable speaking to a larger section of people in your company, make sure there's some people who at least know what to do in emergency. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Chhavi, for bringing up this very important idea of opening up a dialogue with people around us, whether they are aware of type 1 diabetes, and even more so if they are not. Opening up this conversation is absolutely critical, and thank you for sharing that. Kanak, I will just ask you to sort of bring in your closing comments on today's conversation, maybe with a little bit of a focus on what is it that we want from the medical fraternity, from our doctors, from our healthcare providers. What is it that the type 1 diabetes community is looking at them for?
Sure, sure. So I think I'm going to bring a little bit of my research over here as well, because the one thing that was really standing out to me throughout this conversation was that I think all of us are lucky to come from a position of privilege where, we haven't really had to worry too much about maybe access to insulin, or, even occupationally. I think we've been lucky that way. And I was comparing this to some of the narratives that I got when I was conducting my research. So I was essentially looking at how I had two components to it. One was, the simpler part is, what are the challenges of living with type 1 diabetes and how do you cope with it? And the other was this whole quantitative thing to look at whether our beliefs about our diabetes and our distress from our diabetes relates with our HbA1c, so our glycemic control in that sense. Surprisingly, what I found was that unlike Western literature, wherein your ways of perceiving your illness were very directly related to your glycemic control, that wasn't the case here. And that surprised me because, it seems like people are thinking in all the ways you would want them to be thinking, but it's not translating into action. And what's going wrong? And that's when I realized that it's the link between thoughts and outcomes is mediated by behaviors. And so a lot of us have a lot of positive thinking, but that doesn't always translate into actually taking care of ourselves. And I've seen people say, I love my diabetes, and I'm so happy with my control when readings are 200, 250, and just this sense of acceptance. And acceptance is extremely important, right? But not if it's going to lead to a point of stagnation where you choose to accept the bad numbers, the potential complications, and things like that. But in terms of the challenges, I think all of these things that we've discussed today, one more that I'll bring in very quickly being body image issues is something that I came across. And in fact, in terms of the diagnosis for bulimia, the ICD has a separate, clause that they put in silently in the criteria where they say that in diabetic patients, this may manifest as them withholding insulin in order to be able to lose weight. And I wasn't really aware of the magnitude of this phenomena, but it is huge. And I mean, I don't know if it's a cultural thing and we don't see it as much over here, but that's definitely something I think being a part of this platform here, I think it's important for all of us as people in the healthcare industry, I speak as one myself, to really be on the lookout for things like this. The thing that really stood out to me the most was, the common factor across my research, even though I wasn't looking for this, emerged to be people's sort of demand for more support. And this comes, peer support was valued highly more than medical support. I'm going to probably get a lot of flack for saying this, but everyone was very clear on the fact that, these other people who are living with it, they sort of get it better. I don't care how many degrees you've got over there, but I think until you've really spent a couple of years living with this, you don't fully understand what that's like. And that's an interesting perspective because I've met some truly amazing endocrinologists, diabetologists, and all of them. I think Dr. Beena is one of them herself. But I've also met, unfortunately, a couple of really bad ones. And I think so in terms of what we're looking for from the medical community, speaking as someone who got those complications at age 18 and at age 24 now, I have been able to reverse all of them successfully. And unfortunately, that hasn't really been because of the advice of my doctors. It's because I took things into my own hand and I tried out, what sort of a way of eating works for me, because the standard way of eating was not working for me. So those things are controversial. It raised a lot of eyebrows from my doctors for all good reasons. But I think the one thing that comes from a more personal perspective, I would say that just be a little more open, right? Don't shut doors before really even listening to what the person's saying. Because I understand that there are protocols in place, but protocols don't always apply to each and every one of us. And there is a need with an illness like this, with a condition like this, rather, I think as Chhavi termed it, and I think that's a better way of putting it. You can't really have a one size fits all rule, and you are going to have to individualize each and every component of it. So definitely keep that in mind and have a little bit of empathy. It's easy to say, just eat better and don't, this is going to affect you, and, just take your shots on time. And why are you taking it instantly before eating? Take it 20 minutes earlier. This. Yes, I do. I mean, I think we all know it. You've said it to us enough times. We've learned it ourselves, but knowing and doing, there is a big gap there that can come into place. And it gets tiring, it's I think if I had to do it for a year, I would probably do a stellar job at it, but I have to do it for my entire life. So that's not going to be as easy. And there are going to be moments where I'm burnt out. There are going to be moments where I just don't care enough. Then there are also going to be moments where I'm great at it. Don't get me wrong. But I think that sense of empathy, really trying to imagine what it is like to have to manage this on top of everything else you're going on, is something that the medical community on the whole would really benefit from. And I think it is something that they are aspiring to achieve. So that's one. I think there's a lot of stigma that still continues in certain circles because T1D is vastly, I wouldn't even say misunderstood, it's just not understood. People don't know about it. I still get jokes about, did you eat too much sugar and that's why you got diabetes? That's a common one. But yeah, so I think that awareness just simply doesn't exist. And, there is therefore a need for it, a need for more psychoeducation. And frankly, also a need for, and this doesn't come from the medical community, but I think this comes from the government probably, where there is also a need for financial support for a lot of people who can't think about this. And, there's a question of, I think is what we've been saying, I did nothing to deserve this. None of us did, right? And we're going to live with it for the rest of our lives. Probably the simplest thing you could do would be, to not penalize us financially for having to live with it. But I think there is a very holistic perspective that goes into it. Money is a part of it, education, emotional support, empathy, knowledge, and all of those. I understand that it's asking for a lot, but then I think living with this condition can also be a lot at times. So I would say it's okay to be a little selfish and demand those things here.
Can I take 2 minutes and just add to what Kanak has said? Why I agree with everything word to word that she said, and that's why I will say that the aspect of how do I put this correctly? The aspect of the social angle being here, I think, is very important. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is something that we should really focus on. And I think that is what has worked wonders for me, it has been that Beena ma'am very early on, first of all, I met Beena ma'am very early on in my diagnosis. So that for me has really been the best part. But the fact that she truly, as a doctor, understood that the fact that I have to take care of this for a lifetime will require more people to come in besides just her being an endocrinologist. So she had a knack to understand that, listen, this is what is bothering her. So she needs to kind of talk to more people in the community. She was so quick to connect me with Yashasvi. She was so quick to connect me with Namrata. And I'm just going to reiterate that, Kanak, you're right. Peer support, while endocrinologists are important, but peer support is the absolute game changer when it comes to managing your diabetes. I'm associated with 2 support groups, and that's probably why I say this, that both at Blue Circle, you asked me, Dr. Priyanka, what BCDF is. Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation, of course, you are aware. Um, there also, we have so many projects, and at Saksham also, the idea that just in your head, that you are not the only one. When I go online to the Facebook group and I say, I had a horrible day because I had like too many hypos, or today because I had too many hypers, just being able to have a community that's not going to judge me because I've had a bad day, or because I say, I was in range today, and somebody is going to celebrate that with me, has been the absolute game changer for me. And so, yes, I think doctors consciously need to make an effort to understand that we need them. We will come to you for consultation, but on a daily basis, you need to connect us with other people in the community, to make sure that you're probably attending to 100 patients. You're not going to be there for us at every point. So give us a little groups to go back to talk to connect with. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
And we'll do it all ourselves. Exactly.
yes.
Not all, but most.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Chavi, what you were saying, that simplistic prescriptions coming from doctors are not going to do it. If the challenges are psychosocial in nature, then the supports also have to be psychosocial in nature. And our doctors, therefore, probably definitely need to create that entire community of support structures around us. Apart from the medical prescription, obviously,
Yes.
which we rely on them for, but there also has to be this active effort to connect you to other people and actually create that community of support, which I'm so happy to hear from you that there are practitioners who are now actively working using that sort of a stance, right? Yashasvi, anything that you would like to say, or should we end at that note?
Not at all, Dr. Sorry, Priyanka. The thing is that whatever we've had, I think that entire, how Chhavi said, this girl gang really helped us out, because in my case also, there are days when I and Chhavi and Namrata, we just talk about whatever difficulty we've had, and probably she knows a lot about me and I know a lot about her. We discuss each and everything. Maybe we do not, right now it's been a little hectic, we've not talked much, but whenever we share, whatever we've left it at, we try and go ahead from there. And I think that's given us a lot of sanity
Yes.
to deal with our work, to
Hmm.
deal with our personal life, and also deal with our relatives and family, because sometimes our relatives and family also, they coddle us, and then probably they are also not able to understand because they are not going through this. So that
Yeah.
sort of help, it really helps us out. So probably if my mom is not able to understand me, or maybe Chavi's mom is not able to understand her, then we can cross wire and discuss our discussions, and then we'll be like, all right, so probably they are thinking in that sense, we are thinking. And because I cannot have a clear perspective for my mom, or probably she cannot have it for her mother, then we end up getting a perspective out of it, and then we try to understand, okay, this is how, what they must be thinking. And I think it's better that way, because we had to deal with whatever God has given us, and probably this has helped us a lot, because and it still is, I think. So I would like to end, yeah, peer support, Kanak, is the best thing. And I I don't know. I mean, we've never had a word with you as such on a very major block. But in case you want to join us, please feel free and join our girl gang. The more, the merrier. That is what I would say.
Absolutely.
All right. So on that very positive and exciting note, and I think we'll end today's conversation. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Great talking to each one of you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.